Welcome to Podnutz Pro, episode number 17. You know, 17 used to be my number when I was a soccer player back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was always my number when I was playing soccer. Podnutz Pro number 17, like you guys care, is about professional computing. You know, we do Podnutz Daily, we do Podnutz, we talk about how to fix people's machines, get rid of viruses, residential customers, maybe a little business here or there. But you guys, I'm saying, I want to get into small business. I want to do enterprise stuff. I want to learn server. That's what this show's about. So if you're interested in that, hopefully we will fulfill your wants, let's say. Helping me do that is the two men that make that possible. First, Matt Rainey from ah-computers.com. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Steve.
What's going on with you?
Oh, the usual. The usual.
You know,
busy.
Yeah.
Clients are very entertaining.
Well,
as one word to use.
As usual. You did get your third monitor though, so you look very content there.
I did. I got my new computer, surrounded by 72 inches of monitors.
Wow.
Wow. Hey, Matt, can you give me the side view of you looking at all three?
Yeah, let's take an action shot.
This is center. I can look all the way over here, and then I can look all the way over here.
Wow, that's like 70 degrees.
Yeah, it's like a cockpit. I don't do flight simulators, but I was thinking about getting one just to try it.
Nice. And that's all hooked up to one computer, though, right?
Oh yeah.
Ah, that's smart.
Sweet.
Joining in preparation of Duke Nukem Forever.
Nice.
Forever.
Joining the shenanigans, Lalo Nunez, BetterPCTech.com. Hey,
what's up, people?
What is up with you?
Good, man.
Good. Lalo doesn't have three monitors in front of him. Sorry to say. All right, Matt, what do you want to talk about this week?
First, I want to talk a little bit about user management and Server 03 small business server.
Okay.
We talked last time about creating the accounts and dealing with computer accounts and user accounts. But once you create it, there's some other things to do, or a lot of things you can do with the user accounts once you create them. That's what we're going to talk about today. A lot of the common administrative tasks that come up dealing with user accounts.
Okay.
We'll kick it off. When you create the account in Small Business Server 2003, and we're going to talk specifically about 03 Small Business Server, because Small Business Server 08 is completely different than 03.
And I guess we could talk about 03 because it's still very highly in use.
Right. You go to a company, and if they've had a server, this is what they're going to have. And we'll talk about 08 too, but since they're so different, we've got to talk about them separately.
Okay.
And there's one, when you create a user account in 03, you do that using the server management like we talked about.
Right.
Then you have a computer account. When you click on that account or double click on it to open the properties of that account, what you're looking at is actually the same properties you'd see if you drill down into Active Directory users and computers, which is the behind-the-scenes management. The server management console and Active Directory users and computers for 03 is the same.
Okay.
It's the same exact interface as far as what you can do. With 08, it's different. If you click on the user account in 08, you are not going to see all the options you have. You have to go somewhere else for management. And the steps they follow are different. I don't particularly like it because they decentralized the administration. In 03, it's all in one place. So we'll go over that.
Okay.
So when you click on a user account, there's a whole bunch of tabs. There's 1, 2, 3, there's like 15 or 16 tabs of all different kind of things. And I'm not going to mention all of them because you don't use most of them in day-to-day use.
I'm going to throw the graphics you sent me up on the screen as you talk about it.
Okay.
Just so they can see all the tabs.
Yeah, it's a test account I created on somebody's server. So the general tab is the first tab you're going to get to. You got things like first name, last name, display name, description, by default that's user, office, telephone number, email, and web page. Now some things I don't know why they have it, like web page. Office, you can kind of, if you had multiple offices, you could put main office, branch office, just if you wanted to see in the list who was at what office quickly, because you could sort by office if you wanted to, or sort by description.
Okay.
So you might want to edit those things sometimes. The display name that's in this general tab is
Yeah.
what users see when you email somebody. So let's say you have a secretary,
Mary.
Mary.
Yes.
She gets around. A lot of companies will have their reception or secretary just have the user account secretary or receptionist. But when they email out, they don't want it to say from secretary, secretary. That's generic. They don't know who that's from. It just says they got an email from secretary.
Right.
So you could put, if you wanted, first name, which by default matches the logon name, but that can be changed to secretary or receptionist, and display name. You can put whatever you want in display name. So when they do email somebody, it could say their full name. It could be Bob's secretary, whatever they want to show up as. You can change that right here.
That's display name.
Right, and that's pretty common. If somebody gets married, you may want to change that. You can also change an email address. We'll show you later on, but display name is what they see. So a lot of times, that's where you're going to change it. If you only put a first name when you create the account, that particularly bugs me because you get email from Mary.
Right.
Put a last name in there. Come on, it's not that hard. Another tab that you're going to go to a lot is the account tab. In here, you've got the logon name. Now, this can be different from the first and last name on the general. You can change it right here to be whatever you want it to be. On this tab, you've also got things about passwords. You can set it to where they have to change the password when they log in. And you might use this if they forget their password, they call you for a password reset. Depending on their security, they might not want you to know what their password is. So you put it something general, password 123, and you check the button that user must change password at next login. So when they log in, they get prompted right away to change it. That way, I don't know their password, and their password is secure with them only.
Okay.
There's a box where you can put user cannot change password. This might be useful if you've got a bunch of people using the same account. Let's say you got a computer in a shop somewhere, and the username is shop or machinist or whatever it is. And you might have 6 or 7 guys using that. They all know what the password is. You don't want one of them changing it so the other ones don't know.
Right.
So in that case, you might put user cannot change password. And you may also put the password never expires option, which is the option right below that, so it won't expire. Okay. Set it to be a complex password. Don't let it expire.
Cool.
The next one, store password using reversible encryption. Don't worry about it. Forget it. Just ignore that button.
Okay.
There's an account expires. I rarely use this, but if you have an intern or a temp, or even if a client tells you, look, this person is going to be let go at 5 o'clock or on this day, you can put the account expires that day so they can't log in.
Okay.
Right, and we're in a big environment like the one that I work in, we use that a lot because we have the vendors that come in for a contract. They work for 30 days or whatever the case may be, and that account expires after a certain day. Also, what Matt is talking about, when you create your user accounts, make sure you use the format. There is no right or wrong, the format. You can do last name, first initial, last name, or first name dot last name. Just make sure it's the same across the board.
Right. It's easier if a customer says, "What's my username?" which they forget all the time.
Right.
You can know without looking it up if it's their first name. And if you only stick with first name, the company gets big, you're going to have a problem, because if you have Mary only as a username, if you got 200 employees, you may have another Mary. So now you got to do a Mary B for her last name.
Right. And I used to, I'm sorry, Matt. And I used to work for a company that had all the usernames by their employee numbers. Talk about confusing. Just chaos. And I could not convince them to switch them to first name or last name. They wanted to do it by their employee numbers.
Really?
So it was like 0153824.
Oh, man.
I was like, jeez. Her name is Mary.
Everybody's a number.
Yeah.
Now on this tab, the account tab, you've got log on hours button, which I never use, but you could set available hours that the user is able to log into the computer. So if this person's never supposed to log in after 5 p.m. or before 8 a.m. Just you can set that. I've never used that. There's also a log on to button on here. Now, sometimes clients do want us to put something in here. And the log on to, you click on that, you can type in computer names that they're allowed to log into. By default, any domain user can log into any domain computer. And sometimes when you get an owner or an office manager who realizes this, they think that's a security risk. Even though they're going to load their own profile, and by default, they're not going to have admin rights, they still sometimes want us to put log on to and put their computer name in there. So they only can log on to their computer.
Right, and I've seen it where in some states I have friends that they use where they restrict the hours because employees can work over the 40 hours, so they make sure of this by doing this. Now, this is not the best way to do it, but it's a poor man's way of making sure that employee that starts at 8 doesn't log in at 7:45 and officially is working. Some folks also use that login tab where, let's say, if you have an accounting team, that they can only log into the computers. So if I knew the password in accounting, I couldn't log on as Mary on my computer. So just some different ways of using that.
Cool.
And one thing that comes up is I don't know why you get a lot of calls of Mary quit, and now we have Jane.
Why?
So we need Jane to log in. Now, how do we do that? Now, Jane might have an account. Let's say she's just switching computers. And I say, well, you just put your cursor behind Mary, take it out and type in Jane and log in. Oh, no, but this is Mary's computer. They think whatever login name is showing that's their computer and only they can log in. I don't know why people think that, but it's very common for them to think that. And that's where the log on to, when they finally hits them, oh, wait, I don't want Mary logging in. Why should the Mary be able to log into the boss's computer? Okay. Well, really, is Mary going to go sit in the boss's office and log in? And even if she does, she doesn't have access to the things that the boss has access to. Now, one thing I've seen come up, if they do want to have the log on to option, if they're using Outlook Web Access or Remote Web Workplace, or they have a phone that's doing active sync, the log on to is going to have to include the server in there. Because when you're doing active sync or Outlook Web Access, you're actually logging into the server, not at the console, but you're making the remote connection to the server. So if you don't have the small business server in there, that stuff won't work. So that's one thing to check, because I've seen that happen where customers put their computer name, but then their phone stops working, or they can't get the remote web workplace, and that's because the server's not in there.
Okay.
Another tab that's important is the profile tab. You've only got a few options in here. One's the profile path. This is for roaming profiles.
Boo.
Yes. I do not like roaming profiles. They cause more problems than they solve.
Tons of problems. And just to give you one example, that is where a roaming profile is. Whatever PC that user logs into, it copies over their My Documents, their desktop, or their local app data. Cool concept from Microsoft, just doesn't work. Because when Bob has 32 gigs of MP3s on his desktop, guess what happens when he logs into a new PC? The network is bogged down because here comes 32 gigs of MP3s flying from the server to his other PC.
And what happens a lot is they might, unless you have computers that are identical with identical software loaded on it, you log into one computer, you're going to have icons that may be specific with applications on that computer.
Yes, good point, good point.
You log into another computer, half the icons aren't going to work, and they delete them. Then they go back to their other computer, and their icons are gone, and they want to know what happened to their icons.
Good point.
So, well, you deleted them. No, I deleted them on that computer. Yes, okay. But the profile is roaming, so it goes with you. That's common. Plus, there's also can be issues if they log into more than one computer at a time. The way the profile is written back to the server, you could lose data if you save the file on your desktop. It may be gone depending on how they log in and log out.
Makes sense.
So I avoid roaming profiles, and if they ask for roaming profiles, you know what? Just tell them they have a roaming profile. They're not going to test it.
Just tell them they have it. You have the best one we have.
Now, in here you have login script. In a small business server, by default, it's going to be sbs_login_script.bat. What this does, you can create your script. So you're going to do your drive mappings, map to whatever drive letters you want for the user to see. Now, this batch file by default is under, and I'm going to guess from memory, C, Windows, sysvol,
NetLogon.
NetLogon scripts.
Nice.
Yeah.
The tag team there.
And in there, under that scripts folder, and when you're browsing, you'll see it's shared. Go in there, go in the scripts. It's in there by default. You can edit this. You can create more scripts if you want. As long as the batch file is in that folder, you just put the name of the batch file in this login script window. You don't need to put a path. You just put the batch file, and it's only going to look in that folder for the batch file. So Mary may have a different login script than Bob. I don't like that. I like to have one login script and just control access through permissions.
Okay.
But sometimes they'll say, well, I don't want Bob to even see this drive letter. Well, in 03, you can do group policy to do login scripts, or you can just set a login script here. It just depends on how big of an environment it is, if you want to mess with group policy or not.
Yes, and group policy is an awesome tool. For those of you that might not know what it is, group policy is a set of rules that can be based on computer, based on user. I mean, you can customize tons of stuff, but that's for a topic for a future show. And a bunch of Red Bulls and a cup of coffees.
And group policy in 08 is much better than 03. Now, sometimes you in here you have a user logging in and they'll complain, I don't have any drive letters. I can't see the network drives. Well, this is where you would check. Compare login scripts, see if there's a login script running. It's maybe blank. They may have created a login.bat or something else, and they're pointing to the default script. So this is the tab you would look to see what script's going to run when they log in.
Okay.
Under there, I got a home folder, local path. You can change the location of the home folder. But what you also have is a connect button. What we use, and we use this kind of frequently, it'll say connect, and this is separate from the login script. You can connect a drive letter to a path, and this is your home folder. So you might connect Z or U and just map that to their user folder, so they only see U, and everybody's U folder would be different based on the path. So you can do / server, whatever the server name is, / users / and you can put %username% as a wildcard, and it'll just fill in their user account.
Okay.
Hit apply. Now everybody's got their own home folder specific to their login.
Now,
and we use that a lot.
Now, for those that are asking, what's a home folder and why would I need one? The home folder is what you tell everyone within the company. If you have anything that's mission critical that you cannot lose, copy it to your home folder, because that gets backed up and that's an array. And because if you don't, I tell the user, if you copy it on your desktop and your hard drive crashes, you're kind of out of luck. But if you get your user into the habit of copying to the home folder, 9 out of 10 times they can go to a different PC, still access the same file, but the data is backed up primarily.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you can redirect their My Documents to if you're mapping you as a home folder, you can do My Documents, My Documents. So that's on there as well. So and whenever they log in, they'll have their documents. Now you can also, again, there's many ways to do this stuff. If you only have a couple users, you may not want to configure document redirection. You may just want to put it in here and change the path of My Documents on the computer. You can also do My Document redirection with group policy as well.
Okay.
But this is not group policy. This is just the tabs in the account setup.
Gotcha.
Another tab that we use a lot is the Exchange General tab.
Okay.
Here you've got your alias, which is your default email address. So whatever your username is, basically it's going to be that usually. So if you have Mary, your alias will be Mary. You can change this. Now here's a trick. If you change the alias right here and you go back to the general tab, on the general tab it's got your email address. But if you just change the alias and hit OK and then go back to the general tab, it's going to revert back to what it was.
It is?
Yes. Because you have to go into email addresses, change it there and set it as default, then change the alias name. It's kind of strange the way it works. An 08 server, it works better. You can just change it. But if you don't do it in the right order, it's going to revert back to what it was before, which is kind of silly. Yeah. Yeah. Like in the example on mine, it's just Matt. If I added a new email address and called it Matt R and set it as default, it's still gonna save as Matt unless I change the alias to Matt R. So it's a little strange the way that works.
Thanks for pointing it out.
Yeah, because you might change it and think it's changed, but you have to look closely because on the general tab it's still gonna say your old one. Now on this, we use this a lot too. On the Exchange General tab, you've got a few tabs: delivery restrictions, delivery options, and storage limits. And this is all relating to Exchange, your mailbox through Exchange. Delivery restrictions, you can set how large of an email you can send, how large of an email you can receive, and message restrictions, who you can receive mail from. We rarely use the account message restrictions because we just leave it at the default of accept messages from everyone. But I have had people ask me, can I only allow this employee to receive mail from internal employees or from certain people? And you can do that here. It's a little goofy and it's not that great, but you can do it. You know, one way is just not to have a publicly accessible email address. You know, if you have matt@podnutz.com, and your Podnutz was a domain, and your domain is podnutz.local, my email address can be matt@podnutz.local, which is not accessible from the outside.
That's a good idea. That's a good workaround. I never thought about doing that. I've been asked to lock it down or restrict it where they can only email other departments, but that's a good idea.
Yeah, now the drawback on that is if I don't have a public email address and I just have a local address, I can still email out. And to somebody else, my email address would be matt@podnutz.local. If they tried to reply, it wouldn't go and they get a bounce back saying can't find it. So the downside of doing it that way is they can still send out, but they won't be able to be replied to. Now, I have had people want to say, well, have it change the reply to address, and it gets diluted what these customers ask you to do sometimes. But normally, with Exchange, you can do pretty much whatever you want, if you know where the tabs are to go. Default in Exchange 03, I believe, is 10 megabytes that you can send and 10 megabytes that you can receive. So on this delivery restrictions, you can change it. Let's say one user has to send larger files. You can change this per user. You know, if it's set to use default limit, I might change it for this user to send 20 megs or receive 30 megs. So you can have some leeway here.
Right, and keep in mind that if you don't put a limitation on there, people will try to email ridiculously large files. I've seen it happen in several different companies. And if management wants you to set that at a really high number, be aware. Just because you can send 30 meg attachments doesn't mean my company, my server, I set it only to accept no larger than 15. So then you get all these errors and you're trying to figure out why. So don't set that number too high.
Right. And when they do want to set it too high, that's when I explained to them an FTP server,
Exactly.
because what they want to do is transfer files.
Exactly.
It's like stuffing a 50-pound. It's like trying to ship a computer in an envelope. The envelope wasn't designed for that.
No, sure. In fact, one company, I'll make a long story short, they had told me that their email came down to a halt. I looked at the logs, and one guy was trying to send like a 220 meg attachment. It wasn't going anywhere, but the change bots kept trying to process this email that wasn't going anywhere. And once I took care of that, and they were fine. At that point, they had limitations.
Right.
Bad boy.
Yeah. You got to have some limit, even if it's a little high. I've seen people try and email 900 megabyte videos. And of course, the message I get is I can't send any mail, and I look and it's got a. I'm only trying to send one file. It can't be that big.
It can't be.
Well, it can be big. It can be big. Let's see.
Avatar.
And you'll be amazed. You ask them how big is the file, and they have no idea. Right click on it, go to properties. What's it say? 985 MB.
Wow.
Large for email.
It's called BitTorrent.
Exactly.
But it happens. But if you at least, and I think they had no limit, so it was trying to go out. Had they had a limit, it would have just failed, saying too large.
Right.
You also have on this delivery options on this tab as a submenu. You can do grant permission, send on behalf, grant this permission to, and you can add users. So you may have a secretary that's allowed to send email on behalf of her boss if you want to do that. I don't do that a lot because the clients don't like it when it says this email sent from so-and-so on behalf of. They don't like when it says that, and that's what this does. So there's other ways that you can do that. There's also a forwarding address, and this is where we use this a lot. I talked about a BlackBerry before. If they don't have a BlackBerry Enterprise server, or if they have if they've got a device that they're already getting email on, they may say, I want you to forward my company mail to this address. This is where you do it. Now, you have to, before you go here, create a contact in Active Directory users and computers, but you create a contact in there with the email address. Then when you select forward to, you can pick it. So now it forwards that email to whatever contact you created.
Right. In Active Directory, what Matt's saying is that instead of creating a user account, you create a contact. I used to call mine, Matt's BlackBerry. So then when you hit that button that he's talking about, not only can you search user accounts, but you can search for the contact Matt's BlackBerry, and then you're good, because you can't just type it in there in O3. It just won't take it because it's looking for an account.
Right. And you can also have, it says deliver messages to both forwarding address and mailbox. It depends on what you're doing, if you want to check that or not. If you're going to a phone, you want to check it to go to both, because you want the mail in his Outlook client too. You don't want it going just to his phone. You may not want to leave this checked if the employee is terminated. You don't want their mailbox filling up. Just send it to the new person.
Or for those of you that work in these small businesses, or you have a small business and a client, you'll see a lot of people want it forwarded to a private email address. And one company, they did this forwarding. I advised not to, but they did. So the employee got terminated. Then they never deleted the account. So this guy was getting emails about himself. They were talking about him, who's going to replace him, and how he was a moron, and because they left the forwarding email address there.
Oh, man. That's lame.
True story.
And I tend not to use the forward to unless it's for a phone. But even still, there's other ways to do it. But the BlackBerries, you can do other things where you're not forwarding. The forwarding is good in certain circumstances, but there's another way in the next screen is the way that we normally do it for employees that were terminated or no longer there. But the forward to is an option if you're asked to forward an email address. You've also got storage limits. The default store limit, the default message mailbox size is, you know what? I forget what I always remove those because I don't like them. They put them pretty low.
Yeah.
too low than what I think they need to be. So I usually remove the limits on the Exchange mailbox on the store itself. So here you can set it. If a user's getting out of hand, you can set it. Nobody really wants a limit on their mailbox size. If the people who are going to exceed those limits have reasons and their bosses usually let them, so there's not much you can do about it. If you have a limit of 200 or 2 gigs on the mailbox and they reach the limit, you're going to get a call saying to increase the limit anyway. So you can either remove the limit completely or just make it really big.
Now, and it's change 03 there. Isn't the limitation, I think it's like 18 gigs unless you set a switch in the registry, then it bumps it up to 76?
Right, by default, well, in 03, right, the limit is 18 gigabytes for the message, for the mailbox store. You can go up to 75 gigabytes with registry entries.
Right, and I worked for a company, again, 2 jobs ago where they sent large attachments. I mean, for business, the reasons. And I tried to put limitations, and they were just totally against it, so they overruled me. The mailbox store hit almost 70 gigs in a matter of 10 months. And it was just hell. And I had to write scripts for them to archive their email automatically every month, and that was the only way that I could manage it because we couldn't afford a new box, you know, so I can rebuild the whole store. I mean, but what a nightmare. You had people with 8, 9, 10, 11 gigabyte mail stores, and it drove me nuts. And I was like, see, told you to put a limitation on that box.
Right. And I tell my clients when they get close to the limit, I tell them the limit 70 gigs. I never set the limit above 70. And when it hits 70, I say, well, that's it. I kill the SMTP services. I say, now email's down until you clean out your mailbox.
We're going home.
Because if it gets to 75, you're going to have issues mounting it.
Yes, flaky.
To clean it out. So I cut it off before that limit to let them still have some room to mount the mailbox and clean up the mailbox store.
Now, Matt, and you might have a better way of explaining this, but for example, if your mailbox store gets to that 70 gig, even if you archive a bunch of email, it doesn't shrink back down. It's a database that gets to that point, and you can't shrink it back down because of the white space. You have to maintain that size. So it becomes, unless you mount it.
Well, you can run the offline defrag.
Right, but it has to be offline, and you have to take the email down.
Right. And one thing with that, because we do that frequently.
Oh, really?
When a client, yeah, if they're on 03, if they get up there. Here's one trick to that, though. So if like he's saying, if the database is 70 gigs, deleting mail is only the first step to get that size down. They have to, and here's what I tell the clients when they get to that point. First step, delete every email you don't need. After you deleted everything from inbox, sent items, all your subfolders, delete everything, then delete deleted items because they forget about that. The mailbox size is the same thing when they hit delete because it's just going through deleted items.
Right.
So that's the first step, delete everything. The next step is to archive everything else that you need. Keep maybe the last year. And I'll tell them if they want to organize, let's say they have 6 years of email that they absolutely need. Well, I tell them to archive everything older than January 1st, 2006, and call that archive file 05 and older. So that pulls everything out up to December 31st, 2005. Then run archive again, everything older than January 1st, 2007. So that way they get a year. One PST file is 1 year. So they can kind of organize a little bit. Once all the archiving is done, then you have to run an offline defrag. Now, mail is down while you're doing this, but I've gone from 70 gigabytes mailbox store down to 28 when we were done.
Wow.
And I also tell them, for clients, email is not a place to store your files. So if people like to email large files to themselves, so they know where the file is, but in 03 server, you're limited to 75 gigabytes in the mail database. So if you're keeping 20, 30 meg files in your email, that's not where you want to keep that. I make a point to tell them if you're saving the message for the attachment, save the attachment out, delete the email. Because that one email is taking up 30 megs.
Or use the server. It drove me nuts that you had two people they had an office right next to each other. Instead of saving it on, the P drive or whatever map drive it was on the server, I would email the file to Steve, even though we had a server that we could store that same file. I mean, these are like the kind of things that, as you do small businesses or you work in a networking environment, that would just drive you nuts.
Yeah, because email, that's what people use the most. And when they have to have any inconvenience or down, and a 70 gig mailbox, you're going to archive. If you got to clean it up, you might get 6 gigs an hour, roughly, to archive it. So if you got a 70 gig mailbox, you can tell them, 70 divided by 6. It's a rough estimate of how long it'll be down. And you've got to have enough in it. You got to have enough free space to run it.
Right. I think it's 110%, if I remember.
Yeah, something like that. So if your mailbox store is 70 gigs, you got to have like roughly 100 gigs free space to run this offline defrag. And I tell you, people who have 70 gig mailboxes usually don't have 100 gigs free laying around the server.
Exactly.
So there's things you can do, like attach a USB hard drive and use that for the offline defrag. One thing, since we're talking about this, is there's an option in Exchange to keep mail you've deleted. And we'll cover this later on, but basically when you delete an email from Outlook, it's not gone for, I think, default of 30 days.
Yes, it's set to 30 days by default.
So when you delete it, it's still there. Even if you cleaned out everything and archived everything, it's still there. Before you do this, you got to go in there and set that retention policy to like 1 day or 0 days. So when it's gone, it's actually gone. Because I've had users, they've called me and they said, I'm running the offline defrag, but it didn't free up any space. Well, they didn't change the retention policy, so there was no space to free up. But that's a whole nother show about Exchange maintenance. We got off track there. Another tab that we go to a lot is email addresses. In here, you can create whatever email addresses you want. And your Exchange server doesn't have to be just one email domain. You can host email for as many domains as you want. So if it's like podnutz.com, we could also have, Linux for the rest of us.com, thegreattechdebate.com if we wanted. You could, your server can host all of those domain names. So in here, you could have a user account at whatever domain name you wanted. Doesn't have to be only one domain. But here's where you would create those. You just do new, type in the address, and you're done. Don't worry about the X400 addresses. Leave those. Don't delete those.
What about therainies.net? Is that real?
That is real.
Oh, wow.
That's my private one that I use. I host it on a Exchange.
Oh, God.
Not
You put it up there.
That's okay. I actually don't use it that much.
Sure you do.
I've gotten away from that because I'm trying to consolidate my emails, and that's when I rarely check.
Okay.
That's why I use it. I don't really use it. And believe me, it's got a lot of spam filtering on there, so I don't get spam. Now, one thing on this is automatically update email addresses based on recipient policy. Let's say you create 10 domains on your server. By default, you're going to have your username at that domain. If you don't want all 10 domains for a user, just uncheck that and just put in the ones that you want.
Gotcha.
Email Exchange features tab. I don't use this that often, but if you want to limit users to not let them use POP3 or IMAP or Outlook Web Access, you can do it here. But I rarely enable POP3 and IMAP. It's not even allowed through the router, and the services aren't running. So in that case, there's no reason to turn them off here because they're not actually running. But if you are running POP3, you could limit which users use it in this window.
Okay.
I don't like POP3 or IMAP, by the way. I know a lot of people use it. I hate it.
We know we're starting to learn all the things you don't like, Matt.
Exchange Advanced. Here's a tab that I use a lot. And the thing I use for this is two things I use. Hide from Exchange address lists. There's a global address list when you're on Exchange server using Outlook. When you like do new and do a new message, the global address list is everybody by default in the domain and contacts that you've created. So if you want to contact that you don't want showing up, you just click hide from Exchange address list. That way it won't, it is still an active address, but it won't show on the global address list. Now, there's a few things with this hide from address list. If you're set up a new user and you click that button, when you go to open up Outlook for the first time, if this is checked, it won't resolve the username.
Right.
It'll tell you it doesn't exist. So open up Outlook first, let Outlook resolve the name, then you can hide it from the global address list.
And now that's a good tip, because when I first did that back in the day, which was a Tuesday, it took me forever to figure that out. And I was like, oh, I have to unhide it, then create that profile, then go hide it. So
right,
write that one down.
And you forget, because if it's hidden for some reason and they get a new computer or they change computers, you're not going to remember necessarily that they're hidden from the Exchange address list.
Yes, and also,
but when you get, that's probably what happened to you, Lalo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like the example that we used a little bit earlier, Matt, a BlackBerry, that also is listed in the global address. The guy or is just a phone book, but you have to hide that address, because if not, then everybody's gonna email Matt on BlackBerry.
Yeah, all the BlackBerries, I hide all those.
Right.
After I said forwarding, I hide that. I don't want them showing up, because if they email the BlackBerry directly, it's only going to the BlackBerry.
And it's bypassing the server, which is the effect you don't want.
Right. So I usually now here's what I do for a user that leaves. They say this person is fired, I want them gone. I don't want them using anything. One tip is, here's a good tip. Customer calls you to delete an account, never delete the account.
Never, ever, ever, ever.
Really?
Here's what's going to happen. You're going to delete the account, and then you're going to be restoring it 2 days later.
Yes.
They're going to say, oh, you know what? I need those messages. Oh, I need this. I need that. What you want to do is disable the account and hide it from the address list. That's as good as gone to the customer.
Yes.
Because they won't see it. No one can log in. They can't see it in global address list. It's as good as gone for them. So when they call you back saying, you know what, I need to log in as him because I need to do something as him, you just unhide it and re-enable it and you're done. That's happened too many times.
Yes. Or you'd be surprised how they will let go of an employee, especially if they're high profile, and they bring them back, and they expect you to have all his data there, his email, and if you delete the user account, that's pretty much all gone. So.
Yeah, because even if you create a new user account, it's going to have a different SID.
A different SID, yep.
So unless you want to restore this Active Directory, and to me that's a real pain, just disable it and hide it. And forget about it.
Yes. If there's one tip that you take out of this whole Podnutz Pro series, do not delete the user account. Like he's saying, disable the user account and hide the mailbox, because there will be hell to be paid, and you would think about this episode.
Another thing that I use a lot is mailbox rights. Now, before I said I don't like using the forwarding to go from one user to another in the case of somebody who left the company. Because what that does, it's going to let you get the mail that's new. But they're going to want the mail that they've had, or they want to see their sent items, or they want to see their contacts. Forwarding will not accomplish that. You can go into mailbox rights. By default, every user only has rights to their mailbox. You can go in here and give Bob rights to Mary's mailbox. So what you do now on Bob's Outlook, there's a setting in Outlook to open additional mailboxes. You can tell Bob, also open up Mary's mailbox. Now he's got Mary's full mailbox, new mail coming in, sent items, deleted items, all of her folder structure, everything.
Everything.
That's the way I usually accomplish this, because and they're going to want, if you have it forwarding, Bob's going to get tired of all Mary's junk mail coming into his inbox. He's not going to like it. It's much easier to just let it go to Mary's inbox and give him rights to go see it. Plus, it's easier to filter out. He can look and see it. His mailbox, her mailbox. This was to her. This was to me.
Right, because if you just set that forwarder, Bob's email inbox is going to get bombarded, and he has to filter everything out. Then he's calling you up saying, I don't want this. I don't want the rights.
Yep. So I use the mailbox rights for that. It's much, much easier. Much easier to set up, much easier for the user, much easier to quit, because they can just remove the mailbox from their profile and you're done.
Wow, man, this show is full of good tips, man. For real, it's like a.
Thank you, Lala.
It's like a
fountain,
like a large fry at McDonald's, just full of good tips from Podnutz Pro.
McDonald's. I thought you were gonna do a Waffle House reference. As good as a cup of coffee at Waffle House.
I know. I've had a bad week, so I can't use Waffle House. Sorry.
I went though.
So that's most of the user administration that we do in the user account tabs. You know, and it's just important to know what you can do. I've never had somebody ask me, especially for Exchange, I want to do this with an email. I want to have it go here, go here. You can do it with Exchange. There's all kind of features you can do. And that's for the account management. You know, I want to, maybe we can get some feedback for some users. There's two kind of shows that I think we could do on Podnutz Pro. And it shows like up to this point where it's tutorials, kind of going through wizards and going through general admin stuff. And there's also real life jobs that I do every day. And we could do some tutorials on an episode or some real life, or I just want to maybe have feedback. Email Steve, mail@podnutz.com or Matt@podnutz.com, and tell us what kind of shows you like more, or both of them, or mixture, just to see what y'all think.
Sounds good to me.
You think?
Yeah. See what you guys want. Absolutely.
I think the tutorials are good for you if you're just getting started, but for those who have been doing more, they may like the real life. Now, the real life jobs, I can always make reference to how I did it, what I did. You know, it's just how you phrase it. I could say, I had a user call me with a new BlackBerry. This is what I did. And I would reference these screens. Went to the created the contact doing this way, set the forwarding, did that kind of stuff. But there's different ways to approach it.
Or just, we do still do a combination of both. Tell us what you guys, tell us what you guys want to see and hear, and we'll try to accommodate you.
Because I have enough jobs every day to fill. I could fill a show every day with the jobs I do every day.
That's how Podnutz Daily started.
Even on days that
exactly
I only work half day. I worked a half day yesterday because I had.
And you still have days.
And I still could have done a show on yesterday.
And also, if you want to send an email, if I should wear a beard or not wear a beard, because I'm trying to fight this. I'm playing. But what Matt's saying is this show is for you guys. So whatever you guys want to hear or see what's most beneficial, you know, let us know, and that's what we do. Because I mean, a lot of times, unfortunately, you don't talk to a lot of other guys who work in small business because you're just by yourself. So you kind of learn things the hard way. So we're here for you.
Sounds good.
And
Take
Steve
him up on this. And he is Lalo at Podnutz.com. Matt's Matt at Podnutz.com. I am male at Podnutz.com because I am a male.
Wait, but don't get confused. It's MAIL.
I know,
but you said I am male, and you know.
All right, maybe I just don't want emails.
Speaking
of emails, should we read them? We got a couple, Matt. Should we read them?
Yeah, and I got one story about a old client that came back. But yeah, we can do emails.
All right, hit us up with your story, and we'll do the email.
Okay. We don't lose many clients. Sometimes it happens. It's not our fault. Never our fault. But sometimes it happens. This particular client left almost a year ago under strange circumstances. But in the end, they were mad at us for turning off their email because they didn't pay their bill for 4 months. So after they paid, they transferred the domain away and sent us a letter saying that they were going with somebody else for computer support, which is fine. You know, we shouldn't have to send letters and call for 4-month overdue invoices. No
Right.
big deal. I got a call a few days ago, I guess it was Thursday, from this client. When I saw the caller ID, I thought, what are they calling for? So the work order comes in, they're having issues with Peachtree updates. And I don't have anything against the customer. You know, if they want to leave, that's fine. You know, we're happy to transfer the domain away after they paid, of course.
Oh, but they were calling for support. They weren't calling for like.
No, this is like a year later. Yeah, they were calling us for support.
Like
And they
just
got
like
their
nothing, like nothing happened.
Well,
Okay, go ahead. I'll let you tell your story.
so you know, I don't when the phone rings, I don't answer the phone. That's what we have a receptionist for that. She makes the work orders, and the main reason for that is I don't want to answer the phone because if I answer it, they just start going into what their problem is.
Right.
You know, so I don't do that. I want them to leave a message and I'll call them back, or start the work order with the receptionist. So I called back and I asked to speak to the office manager. Now, the office manager didn't call to start the work order. One of the guys there did. And the guy who called answered the phone. And I said, I'm calling for so-and-so. He said, well, I'm the one who called. I told him, I understand, but I just need to clear it with the office manager. It was quite clear from your letter that you sent that you were not going to use us for support. I just need to clear this with her. And he told me, oh no, I cleared it before I called y'all. It's okay. He said, we've had our computer guy look at this issue and it's Peachtree not updating. He looked at it, he couldn't figure it out. We called Peachtree support person. They couldn't figure it out. And this is his words. I wanted to laugh. He said, so we've had enough people look at it. A regular IT guy can't fix this problem. We need you to come out. I said, nice. I guess I should charge my super IT rate.
Yes. You should.
So I went out, and they had been working on this apparently for a long time, trying to get this to run. And I knew what the problem is from his description. I could have told him over the phone how to fix it, but I didn't want to. And I went out there, and he's trying to run the update, and it fails. He told me, path not found. And in Peachtree, the path not found is relating to the data path. So when I got there, I see a new server, and we've been telling them for years they needed a new server.
And they didn't buy it off you.
No.
Gosh.
Well, I said, oh, so you got a new server. Now, the guy who called me, I like him. He's a good guy. You know, like I said, I don't have anything against them. They made a business decision to go somewhere else. I don't have any hard feelings. I like the guy who called. He's a good guy. And so I'm talking to him. New server, huh? Oh, yeah, we got a new server. That server finally died. I said, yeah, the server we tried to replace years and years ago, huh? Oh, yeah, it just died. We were down for a week while he put a new server in. And when he said that, I knew what happened. I logged into the server. Peachtree is not installed. And you have to install Peachtree on the server because you have to run the updates on the server first to apply to the data files. And he just copied over the Peachtree folder. So I knew what the issue was. And he showed me, see what happens when you run Peachtree? It fails right away. I changed the setting in the INI file, update ran. He said, and it took about 10 seconds. He said, son of a... So I got them running, and I had to do a few things. I had to fix all the mistakes that were done. The update running was not the real problem. The real problem was it wasn't set up correctly. So I spent a few hours out there, got it all figured out, got it all straight. And that was it. And then they had another problem with another computer. And I said, well, do you want me to look at this issue too, or do you want to get your computer guy out here? And when I told the office manager what the issue was with Peachtree, she made a heavy sigh, like there were other issues that they were dealing with from their current computer person.
Right.
That may not have been the case, but that's what I inferred from that.
Right.
And when I asked her, do you want to get, because I said the Peachtree issues are solved. You're good to go on Peachtree. Do you want to get your computer guy out here to look at this problem? She goes, no, you should go ahead and look at that too. So I don't know if we're taking over their work again or not. I just thought it was funny that they had to call back.
Do you want to take over their work?
Oh, I don't mind. I mean, well, okay.
If
they
they're not
pay
gonna
their
pay
bills
you.
on time,
Right.
they pay their bills. We did work for them for 10 years.
Hmm.
We never had a problem with them paying their bills. Maybe there was a hard time because of the oil industry down here. A lot of the businesses are based on the oil industry. So if the oil industry is having a rough time, the businesses have a rough time. So maybe, their official excuse was they were going to go with this other guy because he was closer to them. Now, I'm 15 minutes away from them.
Wow.
So I'm not sure how much closer this person is. I'm sure it
It
was
was 14
because
minutes.
he was. Yeah, I'm sure his rate is cheaper than ours is, but that could be attributed to we're not a regular IT company. His words. I wanted to laugh.
That is awesome.
I'm happy to go out. We did it, but if we're going to continue doing work for them, they'll need to keep current. We'll see how that goes.
And they need to write an official letter of apology to Matt personally.
Yeah.
See, we had some control over that because we hosted their email. So they didn't pay, and one of the things they didn't pay for was email. We just cut it off.
Right.
Now, they transferred their domain away. We don't host their email, so we kind of lose that leverage. If they don't pay now, we just got to harass them and get them to pay.
I see. Or just get
We'll see.
cash up front.
Yeah, we do that with some clients who are
Yeah.
difficult to pay. We tell them we need a check in hand for 4 hours before we do any work. And they, of course, say, 4 hours? It won't take that long, will it? I don't know. I haven't looked at it. If it's too much, we'll issue you a credit. We can send you a check in 120 days for the difference.
120 days. Sound like a bank now. All right. Let me read this one from Anthony. Oh, are you done on that, Matt?
Yep.
Okay.
That's it on that one.
Anthony says, does server operating systems have any kind of antivirus installed by Microsoft, or do you need to install third-party antivirus applications? I'm a network guy with a large company, and I don't get involved with server and admin stuff. I'm just curious about the antivirus software to run on a server. I'm thinking of building a system and running Windows Home Server for media storage and backups at home. What is your take on Windows Home Server? It's from Anthony.
Home server. Well, I think home server is fine for home users.
Okay.
But you do need an antivirus on servers. And you can't put any plain antivirus. It's got to be a server edition or a small business edition. If you have small business server, you have to have it on there.
Okay. You have anything on this?
There's special versions of antivirus for home server, Windows Home Server.
There is?
I think Avast makes one.
Really?
But if you try and put, we had 2 clients running home server in their business. Both of them had issues with the antivirus, even though they were designed for Windows Home Server. I think Avast makes one, and maybe it's better now, but the one they were using wasn't that good.
Okay. All right. Good on this one? Okay. Next one's from Gary. He says, how about doing a series of podcasts on a particular topic and follow up with a question and answer episode, similar to the Security Now podcast? A series of podcasts on a particular topic and follow up with question and answer episode. It's a good suggestion. I like being compared to competitors' podcasts. No, what?
Yeah.
But no, I'm serious. No, what do you guys think?
No, that's
what do you
fine with
think?
me.
Okay.
I like questions.
Good suggestion. Good
Oh, sure.
suggestion.
And see the kind of questions, and I'm gonna be honest, because you get some strange questions from clients wanting to do weird things. A lot of things that they want me to do, I don't know how they got it in their head to ask that or why they did it.
Right.
So a lot of times if they ask me to do something, I have to ask them, what are you trying to accomplish? Because they might ask, how do I do this? But what they're trying to accomplish, that's not the right way to do it. And I guess it would be the same kind of questions with this. We need to know what you were trying to do. Because a client might say, "How do I forward email?" And I ask him, "Well, what are you trying to accomplish?"
Right.
Well, I have an iPhone. I'm trying to sync my mail. Okay. Well, you need active sync set up, not email forwarding.
Right.
Right, and also try to be as descriptive as possible. If you have a server, what version it is, 2003 to 2008. Because with networking, the one thing is each environment can be set up. Like I can set up a network entirely different than Matt. Both ways work. It's just a little bit different. So the question might apply differently to me and Matt.
Yeah, you guys are actually, we do like a question and answer, but it's like a little piece of it at the end of the show. We don't do a whole episode of question and answer, but just keep
sending enough emails for that. That'd be great, huh, Steve?
Yeah, keep sending us your emails, and we'll keep reading them. All right, next one's from Matt Rainey. Matt, this is the one you forwarded to me, and you want me to read this one? This 4-parter.
From Dante? Yeah, we can read that.
Okay.
Yeah.
After listening to your backup show, along with the Anatomy of a Server show, I have a couple of quick follow-up questions or clarifications. Number 1, what is the difference between LTO 2, 3, 4, and 5? Is it the size of the drives available? Let's go through. We'll do each one separate.
Yes, LTO 2, 3, 4, they're all the size. I think it says LTO 2, it's a 200/400. So 200 megabytes or 200 gigabytes native, 400 gigabytes compressed at the unrealistic 2-to-1 compression rate. LTO 3, I think, is 300/. Yeah, it's all the different sizes. And what you want to look at is the non-compression rate, because they may say holds up to 400 gigabytes, but that's 2-to-1 compression, and you're never going to get it. Never. Okay. You're lucky if you get 1.3 compression on most files. So it's the size of the data cartridge.
Okay. Number 2.
Hey, I had some input, Steve.
Oh, sorry.
On that question.
Sorry, man. Looked at you in the last one.
I'm sorry.
Forgot to look at you for this one.
I'll make it real quick. Price. Okay, back to you, Steve.
That's it, really?
Well, I added to Matt, except that these tapes cost more.
All right.
The drives.
All right.
The drives are significantly more expensive. The tapes aren't that bad. The LTO tapes themselves are pretty cheap, $40, $50. The drives get more expensive as you go up.
Okay. Number 2. You have any more, Lala?
No, I'm good.
You mentioned that the LTO tape drives should be changed out and replaced once a year. What about RDX drives? Is that also necessary? I would think so because it's a hard drive, but just wondering what you recommend.
Those are hard drives. They have a longer lifespan. I don't think I'd replace those every year. Plus, those are more expensive. The LTO tapes, $30, $40. An RDX drive, you're basically buying a hard drive, so they're more expensive. Those can go longer. As long as you can run a test on them, see if you have bad sectors. Maybe every 3 years for those, I would say.
Okay.
I wouldn't do 1 year for those. Those can last longer.
Anything on this one?
No, Steve, but thank you for asking.
I will ask next time.
All right.
Politely. I began to research the costs associated with the RDX and LTO drives, and after listening to your Anatomy of a Server show, I was wondering if you typically go with external LTO or RDX drives, or do you recommend internal drives? Is there a speed difference with the external drives compared to the internal?
If it's an existing server, I'll usually do external, just because it's easier.
Right.
If they don't have a controller, I'll throw a controller card in there, depending on the type of connector on the drive, either an external SAS or an Ultra 320 SCSI controller. The speeds are the same. It's just a matter of if it's an external connector or an internal connector.
Okay.
In real world, I looked up one. I have an LTO 4 on an Ultra 160, not even an Ultra 320, an Ultra 160. They're getting up to 1,000 megabytes a minute on that tape drive. So pretty fast speeds.
Sweet. Okay. Next one, number 4. Also, there were pictures you were mentioning about the anatomy show, and I was wondering if I could get those to go alongside with the podcast that was recorded. That is a good question. That was back in the day.
Yeah, I don't have those.
You mailed them to me. I should have them.
I got my new computer, and I remember thinking, do I need these? Because I was kind of cleaning house.
What was the lesson we learned today? Never delete Well, not
A
your
user
account.
account.
User account, Steve.
You know what? Let me see if I still have it. Oh, no, I don't.
I'll sell them to Dante for $25 each.
25.
Wow.
I will take some more pictures for that price.
I'll email them to him. He says, kind regards, keep up the good work. Dante.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dante.
Yep, thanks.
And that is it for the emails for today. Closing comments, last words, Matt?
Last words.
Last word, my last forever. Don't delete user accounts.
You can reach Matt at matt@podnutz.com. You active on Twitter these days, Matt? No.
Active is a relative term. I think I did tweet a couple of things. I had some jobs where I was on a Cox cable install, and they never go smoothly. I was sitting there watching the guy
I
suffer.
can imagine that.
And I was just sitting there thinking, I know what's wrong, but I didn't want to tell him. I let him troubleshoot it.
Let him earn his money. What is your Twitter?
Podnutz Pro.
Okay. Just for the folks.
Yep.
How about you, Lalo?
You can find me at betterpctech.com. Now, I do have some news. I am upgrading the videos. They're going to have more content. They're going to cover more topics. So if you bought the videos up to this point, it will be free for the upgrade. Because once I release the new content, I can promise it'll be at that super low price. But I will ask you, if you have any ideas, if there's anything that you're doing on a daily basis and you say, man, I wish I could automate this, let me know and I'll see what I can do to incorporate that. So any ideas, thoughts on topics, let me know. But it's going to be super duper part 2. Like my favorite movie, Back to the Future part 2.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening and streaming. It's been fun hanging out with you. I hope that you enjoyed this show, and we will see you next time.